If these characters didn't hold back, it might just be the end of the Marvel Universe as we know it. If you are powerful enough to knock out Hulk and live to tell the tale, even if he is possibly a less stronger version of the Hulk from the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, then you probably need to rein in your powers almost all the time, I'd assume. Which is pretty much what is going on with Blue Marvel. For those who don't know, Blue Marvel is one of Marvel's versions of Superman. Blue Marvel's powers, though, came to be thanks to his time as a scientist, where he was forever changed by an experiment gone wrong. One of those science-based power origins. You know the drill. Adam Brashear was the project lead on an experimental attempt to manipulate and utilize antimatter. When the negative reactor exploded, it transformed Adam into, in essence, what he was trying to create. He became an antimatter reactor, harnessing antimatter which powered his amazing newfound abilities. What is your favorite origin or favorite kind of origin? Let me know in the comments. I think my favorite is just mutant. It's nice and easy, you know? Sentry is often written out or killed off in the comics because he is just too powerful. This also means he often has, of course, to hold back his powers. Sentry does every now and then go in guns a-blazing, with him just ripping people in half, kind of becoming a weird, every so often, semi-regular occurrence in the comics. However, I will also say that more often than not, we've seen him hold back and express restraint, especially when you're considering Sentry agreed to wipe his own mind and the minds of everyone else on Earth of his superheroic existence just to protect them from the evil villain, the Void, who is basically Sentry's villainous alter ego he was made to believe he'd always had after being brainwashed by Mastermind. I mean, that is some commitment to holding yourself back if you ask me. For the greater good too, which, not surprised, Sentry out there just being a hero. Apocalypse. He's a really hard one to beat because he's always evolving. When evolution is your mutant power, it means you can alter your physiology to become even stronger, ever more invincible, and, of course, ever more powerful. Which is exactly what Apocalypse does. Add in the fact that he also uses celestial technology to modify his body, and yeah, you have a Vo who is virtually undefeatable. Which means that when he is defeated in the comics, we have to ask ourselves, is it that the X-Men just got really lucky, or is it because he, you know, decided to maybe pull a few of his punches here? In most cases, your choices when dealing with Apocalypse are to join him or perish. There isn't a lot of wiggle room usually, although there are times when our heroes come out on top. Fortunately, more recently in the comics, he's been more on the same side as our heroes, working with those he normally opposed to ensure the survival of mutants in a much less violent way than normal for him. Though this likely has meant he's had to hold back even more to avoid ruffling feathers. What's more terrifying than a mutant who can read your mind and the minds of everyone else on the planet all at once at any distance? One who can also influence your mind, possibly without you knowing. Hence why Professor Charles Xavier is included here on our list. Granted, Professor X usually uses his abilities for good, but as we see in the film Logan, even the best intentions may not protect those you love from the darker sides of one's powers. In Logan, we see an aged Professor X masterfully played by the only Professor X in my mind, Sir Patrick Stewart. This version of Charles is suffering from a degenerative brain disease that basically affects his memories, causing seizures and causing him to lose control of his powers as well, and showing you just what can happen when Charles is like fully unleashed when it comes to his potential. And we learn that the worst has happened. He has supposedly accidentally used his powers to kill members of the X-Men and hurt countless numbers of people as well. Yikes! Magik is truly a superhero who constantly has to hold back lest she threaten the existence of the world and honestly possibly the universe. Magik isn't just a straight up hero, she's complicated. I think that's why a lot of us love her. She also has a darker side known as Darkchild that she often has to keep contained. And honestly, that's a huge thing that I love about her, her complexity. She's got layers. She also has a ton of trauma in her life that she constantly has to confront and deal with, and as someone who has also experienced trauma, I appreciate that about the character's journey. Although I have definitely not experienced trauma on the level of Magik, just to say that. Velasco never kidnapped me when I was little and took me to Limbo and basically like forced me to train in dark magic or anything like that. To say that the Hulk is the strongest there is really not an overstatement. Not only the strongest, but also just one of the most indestructible heroes that we have out there. After all, Hulk is now immortal, and as a result of this, is a character that you do not want to face in a fight. The good news is that Hulk typically doesn't want to kill people, and so he generally holds back in fights, unless he is going up against someone just about as indestructible as he is, and then he can obviously be a little bit more fast and loose with his powers. There are a few ways that we've seen him kind of hold back. One, Hulk has actually exhibited he has morals. Not all Hulks are like this. I mean, look at his alternate Maestro. This version of the Hulk is more devoid of morals and therefore is willing to use all of his strength and powers to devastating degrees. The other reason Hulk is often holding back actually has to do with the other persona that's in there with him, Bruce Banner. It's been alluded to before that Bruce can act at times kind of like Hulk's conscience, but then again it's also been suggested that Hulk actually might be Bruce's conscience, so which one is it? Kinda depends on the story you're reading as to who is the more heroic between these two personas. Mephisto is one of the biggest, most overpowered villains around. He can alter reality, trap you in another dimension, is a master manipulator and deal maker. To highlight just how powerful he is, we're going to talk about the issue in 2018's Avengers, issue number 34. At this point, Moon Knight has been up to some pretty suspicious activity recently in preparation for what will be, from what the Moon God Khonshu has shared with Mark Spectre, some great mysterious threat. Now it turns out that this OP threat was of course none other than Mephisto, and it took all of the powers and relics that Moon Knight had taken from other heroes in order to defeat Mephisto once and for all, apparently. While Mephisto's powers may have strange restrictions, dying and mortality has not been known to be a weakness of his in the past, and overpowered villains who are defeated or who die in comics are of course usually more likely to return even more powerful than stay dead. Black Bolt is a character who is so powerful half the time just the threat of him using his power is enough to stop those who oppose him from just messing with him. At least, directly. That's probably why his brother Maximus the Mad tends to prefer being more sneaky when it comes to taking down his brother and usurping his rule. Black Bolt's powers first manifested when he was born, as his mother and father exposed him to Terrigenesis before he was even born as part of an experiment. This, along with his immensely powerful genetic makeup, resulted in him being born as one of the most powerful Inhumans ever. His powers are related to the speech center of his brain and his ability to harness electrons. Using both, he possesses an extremely powerful voice, with just a whisper often being enough to harm those who stand against him. As it stands, Black Bolt usually communicates telepathically because of this, or more often with his own specific form of sign language. The only person unchained who could be scarier than Professor X would be Jean Grey, especially when under the influence of the Phoenix Force, but even, honestly, probably when not under the influence of the Phoenix Force as well. You may be thinking at this point that the Phoenix Force is the real star of this list, and you know, in some cases you might be right. However, the fact remains that what the Phoenix really gives you is access to your full potential, and this is terrifying with Jean because her full potential is honestly insane. Granted, originally in the comics, Phoenix was a separate entity that existed while Jean was chillin' and healing in a cocoon under the ocean. At least that was the retcon we got. But in the films and the animated series, Phoenix has been presented as a melding of minds, which is later also how it has been explained in more recent comics like we kinda see with the Phoenix 5. Jean is one of the strongest X-Men ever. While her influence over a mind may not be as finessed or maybe as subtle as Charles can be, she could definitely control your mind in a very similar way. The only difference is you would probably know she was doing it as opposed to maybe thinking the actions were of your own volition. With her power-stealing and life-draining abilities, Rogue, aka Anna Marie LeBeau, is one of the most insanely overpowered X-Men that we have around. Considering she's also been a villain before, she might also be one to consider putting a stop sign in front of. Before joining the X-Men, Rogue was a runaway who was taken in by Mystique and the Brotherhood of Mutants. She almost killed Ms. Marvel by touching her. Rogue was used to temporarily taking mutants' powers and weakening them, but in Ms. Marvel's case, she just held on a little bit too long, stealing Carol Danvers' powers in a more permanent sense and leaving her in a coma. Her level of powers and lack of control are honestly the most concerning. Though of course in X-Men Legacy, Rogue gains full control of her abilities after Danger and Professor X were able to figure out how her abilities work and alter her mind to basically help her gain control. She basically had a mental block because she was afraid of her abilities, so they were able to help her get through that, allowing her to kiss Gambit and touch people and do all these great things.
Spider-Man, the friendly neighborhood web-slinger, holds back so much most don't even know he's doing it. One would think that when fighting an enemy, you would give that fight all you got. Turns out with Spidey, he usually holds back in those battles, going for injury rather than fatality. The storyline in Amazing Spider-Man 700s, when Doc Ock and Peter switch bodies, highlights the fact that Peter holds back. As the Doctor is running through the city, ruining Spider-Man's reputation, situation, he encounters Scorpion and the two start fighting. Doc gets really frustrated and punches Scorpion's uncovered jaw, the only place without armor, and he takes it off with that one punch. Doc is very surprised by that fact and realizes that Peter's body has way more strength than he had been letting on. Hank Pym should have held himself back when it came to his wife. He acted harshly towards her, and it ended up almost being the end of that character's career. He lost most of his favor after laying hands on his wife Janet. Whether this was an artist misunderstanding or not, Pym did have some intention of hurting his wife, and that's never okay. He needs to not do that. Hank Pym had been prone to aggressive acts in the past, so pairing the past with this particular scene made the character lose a lot of favor with fans and resulted in some pretty serious consequences. He was kicked off the Avengers. Instead of, cutting his losses, taking some time to work on himself, learn from his mistakes, Hank decided to make Robot. The robot would attack the Avengers mansion and would be unbeatable for everyone except Hank, because he would build in a failsafe only he could stop. Well, he couldn't stop it, and Janet stepped in to save the day. Then she divorced him. Does all of Moon Knight need to hold back? I would actually argue that his many personalities are trying their hardest to hold each other back, pushing and shoving at each other to be the one controlling the ship until they all learn to live with each other, that is. Moon Knight was once a slightly obscure character in the eyes of the general public, but then Oscar Isaac brought the character to the screen and suddenly Moon Knight was all over the internet. For good reason. The show was awesome and it's Oscar Isaac. Moon Knight once joined the West Coast Avengers but hasn't always been an ally. He did defeat the Avengers once and has claimed that even he doesn't know what he's capable of. That might come from the fact that Mark Spector is acting as the avatar for a god. Gods, traditionally in the Marvel Universe, have powers beyond human imagination. Understandable that if Moon Knight's powers are drawn from a god, he doesn't really know everything he is capable of yet. The god that he gets his powers from is the Egyptian moon god, so when there is a supermoon, Moon Knight gets even more powerful. If you happen to be winning a fight against Moon Knight, you might be a god, or he might be holding himself back and letting you win. Not only does he have immeasurable power, the avatar comes with perks like being able to survive in places with no breathable atmosphere and immortality. Black Widow has been trained to be a killing machine pretty much her whole life, so I imagine when she is hanging out with the general public, she has to hold back that side of herself, wouldn't want the random person popping out at the subway to get attacked, We also don't want Hawkeye's family to get attacked, and yet she didn't hold back there, even though she needed to. In the Ultimate Universe, Nat sold out Hawkeye's family, resulting in them all perishing except Hawkeye. I read it, it was awful. This makes Hawkeye very angry, of course, and he hunts Natasha down, finding her in a hospital bed. He makes her reenact the final moments of Jesus' lifetime and ends her right there. A far cry from the best friends we'd seen in the MCU that literally fought each other over who would sacrifice themselves to save the other. Let's combine these last 2 points and discuss Black Knight. Other than the name and team affiliation, no other correlation to Black Widow or Moon Knight. Black Knight is determined to be a good guy, but the blades he wields, the Ebony Blade, is determined to make him a bad guy. The Ebony Blade is tempting, it can cut through anything, stop death, deflect magic, but the catch is that it is cursed. As you use it, it slowly corrupts your mind, making you desire destruction and violence. The current Black Knight is Dane Whitman, who inherited the blade from his uncle. His uncle specifically requested that Dane not become a villain like him. Dane thankfully agreed. That now means he is in a constant state of pushing away the evil the blade is trying to nurture inside him. Dane was pretty much destined to be Black Knight. He was already trained in everything the hero needs: sword fighting, horseback riding, martial arts, strategy, magical knowledge, and science. It's good to know his moral compass is so strong. No one wants to know what this guy is like with all that knowledge and the forces of evil on his side. You know who needs to hold back? Captain America at the end of Captain America Civil War when he is smacking the goatee off of Iron Man. This rant is coming straight from my soul. I am an Iron Man girl, so I recognize that I am biased here. I also love Captain America, do not get me wrong, but Tony and I were like this. Let's just look at that end scene. Cap knew that smashing the arc reactor in Tony's suit would shut it down, and without the suit, Tony is just a guy. A smart guy, but just a guy, not the kind that could take on Cap and the Winter Soldier without his armor. But Captain America also probably knew, feel free to correct me, but he probably knew that for a long time, the arc reactor was the only thing keeping Tony alive. Smashing it not only was scary for Tony because he thought Cap was originally going for his neck, so it shut down his suit and he was powerless, and though Tony fixed the shrapnel capital problem and the arc reactor was just there to power the suit, he had the arc reactor as his heart for years. I imagine that Cap smashing the reactor probably resulted in some mental trauma. Tony was basically watching his heart get literally destroyed. So physical trauma, mental trauma, psychological trauma, he is collecting them like Infinity Stones. Was it a smart move on Cap's part? I would argue yes. I get that the Captain has a lifelong love for his best friend and wants to protect him. It was a brutal watch. Tony Stark, though, isn't faultless. He's got one of the greatest minds, but sometimes ideas can stay on the shelf or in the workbook. Cinematic Tony, we didn't need to create Ultron. Comic Tony, we didn't need to clone Thor and make evil Thor. The greatest minds can truly cause the greatest destruction. Most of Tony's plans start with good intentions. He created Ultron as part of a peacekeeping initiative. He just didn't realize that his software could be corrupted in the way that it was. Tony sometimes has a tendency to think he is the smartest person ever, and that can lead to him not seeing all the angles, not realizing that his plans might have a fault in there, and that can lead to some serious problems. What happened with Ultron is actually very similar to what happened when he cloned Thor. Thor had disappeared, but Tony needed Thor specifically, so he, without consent, cloned Thor. Not only was Tony arrogant enough to think he should be allowed to clone a god, he also mixed Thor's DNA with Stark tech, cybernetics, making a robot Thor hybrid that he called Ragnarok. The clone turns into a bad guy, we all saw that coming, and Captain America no longer trusted Tony. The evil clone joined the Dark Avengers. It was a total mess. Thor, he's very powerful. He is a god, as we just covered. Turns out, the immense power he is showing is actually only a fraction of what he can do. The MCU and the comics have explored Thor's journey of realizing his full potential and learning to become a better person god. Thor was quite arrogant at the start, his fights weren't always fair, and his father, Odin, wanted to teach Thor that he needed to keep himself in check, especially when fighting people that were significantly weaker than him. So Thor was sent to Midgard to learn that lesson. Fighting with the Avengers, fighting humans, taught him that not every foe needs the full extent of his godly power. Sometimes holding back is the right thing to do. Not every foe needs to be completely obliterated. Bruce Banner is always holding back in the movies and the books. In the movies, he literally says he is always angry. That implies that he's always on the brink of turning into the Hulk, but has to hold back because he doesn't want to destroy everything in a 20-mile radius. It's a good thing he has a good head on his shoulders. The mental strain of being the Hulk would not be for the faint-hearted. Though Banner does the best he can, there are unfortunately many examples of him losing control, resulting in the Hulk being incredibly destructive, like that time he went on a rampage through Vegas, or when he was out of his right mind and fought the Avengers to try and get with She-Hulk, yeah, his cousin. In the old Logan world, he actually did get with her, and them and their weird offspring ruthlessly ruled the Wild Wild West. The Hulk terrorized New York at one point, he hunted the Avengers and Fantastic Four, just overall deranged, scary action, some done by alternate universe versions of Hulk. I can't think of another Avenger who needed to hold back the way that Scarlet Witch did. She eliminated an entire genre of human. I am, of course, talking about the time Scarlet Witch said no more mutants and removed the mutant abilities of almost every mutant on Earth. She didn't mean no more mutants like make them disappear, she meant to remove their powers. The problem with that is a lot of mutants' lives are tied to their powers. You take the power away, you take the life away. She was experiencing a mental break when she made the hex, but that doesn't excuse it. Even before she said the sentence that changed the world, she already took out some other Avengers, including Hawkeye, Ant-Man, and Vision. This is not one of Wanda's shining moments. It took a lot for mutants and the Avengers to trust her again. She helped bring people back, and that was nice and won her some favor, but lots of people still fear her.
Number 10, Dr. Fate. So here's the thing with Dr. Fate. Typically the character is not just one character, but two inhabiting one body. This is what the Helm of Fate actually represents, the connection of Dr. Fate to Naboo, the Lord of Order, which is where Kent Nelson originally got his powers and his knowledge from. Of course, Kent Nelson also has powers separate from his appearance as Dr. Fate. He is, after all, a supremely skilled and knowledgeable magic user in his own right, thanks to years of training. However, with Dr. Fate really in essence being kinda two people combined, the Lord of Order Naboo and Naboo's host, in this case we're talking about Kent Nelson, these two do not always agree on how best to deal with an enemy or potentially catastrophic events. Case and point in in Justice League Dark when Nabu takes control of Ken's body against his will, only for him to later be freed of Nabu's influence and refuse to basically use the power of the helm, instead choosing to keep Nabu trapped within it, because Ken knows, well, if I try to work with Nabu, I'm probably gonna get possessed again. This guy's kind of being a little evil right now. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that subscribe? I know there are many of you that are not subscribed, so do it. Click the button. Do it. Number 9. Cyborg. In the Doom Patrol series, we literally saw just how powerful Cyborg is when it comes to using him as a pawn and manipulating him into attacking his own father. Mr. Nobody managed to trick Cyborg and ended up showing just how much potential he has when it comes to his ability to do harm. Cyborg actually would make probably a pretty great villain, to be honest, which is creepy. Cyborg in general usually has to be careful when fighting against enemies because he is super strong. In the comics and other media, he has also been portrayed as being, in essence, a master hacker, and as a result constantly decides to hold back rather than, just use his hacking skills to manipulate the world, which would kind of be, and sometimes that would be a little insidious. In the Snyder Cut, it's even alluded to that Cyborg is actually one of the most powerful people in the Justice League, with him being able to control all the banks and bank accounts of the world if he wanted. That's just part of what we get to see. Here he is shown as pretty much having access to everything technological, but being someone who chooses to use this power reluctantly and responsibly, because he is a hero. Honestly, when it comes to powerhouses in the comics who are capable of doing more, but choose to hold back, knowing that unleashing the full force of their power could be pretty dangerous, Cyborg is actually one of the best examples, even though some might not fully comprehend or accept him as the powerhouse he is. But Vic definitely deserves that. Number 8. Sunspot. Sunspot is one of my favorite heroes when it comes to those who have to hold their power back. I mean, at one point, his power was at risk of killing him, guys. After being shot in the head, he was forced to wear a headband to help regulate his powers, as he lost control of them, somewhat, and left unchecked, they could easily kill him. Sunspot's headband would regulate his powers, thereby protecting Roberto da Costa from being burned up from the inside out by literally holding back and balancing his powers for him. And we see just how necessary this is when Bobby, who at the time was known as Citizen V, decides to throw caution to the wind, removing his regulator headband to prove that he is indeed one of the most powerful mutants to have ever existed, while also obviously fighting to save the world by using his power to keep the world engine running, putting his life on the line. Number 7. Sentry. EJ Graham in the comments for the part 1 of this video was considering suggesting Sentry for a potential part 2. Ultimately though, he decided against suggesting that perhaps Sentry doesn't hold back, and instead often simply gets written out of Marvel Comics because he's too overpowered. I would argue that him both being written out / killed off because he's too powerful, and him having to hold back because he is too powerful, are actually both true. Sentry does every now and then go in guns a-blazing, with him ripping people in half kind of becoming a weird, every so often semi-regular occurrence. However, I will also say that more often than not, we've actually seen Sentry hold back his powers and express restraint, especially when you consider he agreed to wipe his own mind and the minds of everyone else on Earth of his superheroic existence just to protect them from the evil villain, the Void, who is basically Sentry's villainous alter ego he was made to believe that he'd always had after being brainwashed by Mastermind. Number 6. Wonder Woman. We have seen what happens when Wonder Woman stops holding back, and it's not pretty, I'm gonna tell you that. Whether we are talking about emotionally with her giving into a well of despair, or physically with her causing the mass destruction of the entire planet as a result of a fight against Superman. In Tales from the Dark Multiverse, War of the Gods, her giving in emotionally resulted in her being overtaken by Hecate, who she had previously trapped in her subconscious, initially preventing Hecate from possessing her. However, after the destruction of Themyscira and the death of her sisters, her fellow Amazons, and her mother, Diana ends up losing hope, and thereby loses control over herself. In Wonder Woman Dead Earth, we learn of how Wonder Woman giving into her rage and removing her bracelets, which in this story hold back Diana's power, results in the destruction of the planet. Even in the main continuity, it's actually been suggested that Diana is much more powerful than she lets on, and this is likely because without holding back, she could actually cause major damage and destruction to the world around her and people in it. Number 5. Storm. Storm has demonstrated restraint on multiple occasions when facing her enemies, and has proven time and time again how much of a badass she is in the comics. Recently, during the AXE Judgment Day event, Storm was one of the few people to survive Uranos' initial attack on planet Arakko, formerly known as Mars. This went down when Storm was the acting regent of Arakko, the planet and nation's leader. Storm is the only person I believe to have actually sat on both the Great Ring of Arakko and the Quiet Council of Krakoa at the same time, and she made this work for actually a pretty good while. In order to get her seat, she actually had to defeat the previous regent who held the seat of All Around Us, that's the name of the seat that she holds, Nameless, the shapeshifter queen. While Storm bested Nameless, she refused to kill her opponent, preferring to hold back and allow Nameless to live, forcing Nameless to actually curse Storm and choose to take their own life rather than simply admitting defeat. Number 4. Black Bolt. Black Bolt is a character who is so powerful, half the time just the threat of him using his power is enough to stop those who oppose him from basically messing with him. Black Bolt's power first manifested at birth, as his mother and father exposed him to Terrigenesis before he was even born as part of an experiment to see, kind of what that would do. This, along with his immensely powerful genetic makeup, resulted in him being born as one of the most powerful Inhumans ever. Black Bolt would end up being kept in isolation for most of his childhood and early life as a result of the sheer power that he possessed. He literally couldn't even just run around and be a kid. No, too powerful. His powers are related to the speech center of his brain and his ability to harness electrons. Using both, he possesses an extremely powerful voice, with just a whisper often being enough to harm those who stand against him. As it stands, Black Bolt usually communicates telepathically, although not psionic himself, or more often with his own specific form of sign language. Number 3. Icon. Icon has been shown to be even more powerful than Superman on occasion, with Superman at one point remarking that being hit by Icon was the hardest that he'd ever been hit. The two have fought multiple times against one another in the comics, even way back when Clark had his long hair. Oh, I miss his long, luscious locks. At one point they end up fighting in the 2006 Justice League of America series in issue 28, but here it's all a show. So there's no real victors since they are kind of just pretending to fight here. And we have to expect that Icon was holding back somewhat here. Sure, he wanted to make the fight appear convincing, but he didn't actually intend to hurt Superman, which implies that he wasn't even using his full force here, as he likely wouldn't need to go hard to sell a fight to onlookers. With that reasoning, not only have we literally seen Icon hold back, but it also means that the hero, now from DC's Milestone imprint, might actually have to hold back even more than some of the most powerful heroes from DC's mainline, which is pretty wild to consider. Number 2. Magik. Magik is a hero that often gets left out of lists like this, so I want to thank Michael Sheehan in the comments from our part 1 video for suggesting that I add her to this video. Truly, she is a superhero who constantly has to hold back, lest she threaten the existence of the world and possibly the universe. Magik isn't just a straight up hero, she's complicated. She also has a darker side known as Darkchild that she often has to keep contained. And that's what I love about her complexity. She also has a ton of trauma in her life that she constantly has to confront and deal with. Number 1. Dr. Manhattan. Dr. Manhattan has to be one of the ultimate heroes for needing to hold back. Dr. Manhattan is insanely powerful, and perhaps this is why he generally prefers to stay out of the affairs of mortal beings. Well, that and the fact that he likely doesn't much care for, humans. He is a reality warper, and in fact is one of the folks, I would argue, in current lore the main folk, responsible for the New 52 continuity reset. As such, Dr. Manhattan constantly holds back, despite the fact that he could reset the universe on the daily, destroy it, or completely fix everything. Instead of doing any of this stuff though, he prefers to take more of a watcher role, only getting involved when he really feels it's necessary or has some strong desire to do so.
Number 10. Daredevil. When Matt Murdock was a child, he was hit by a truck that was carrying toxic radioactive isotopes. He got some gunk in his eyes, and as a result, he was blinded. But this being Marvel Comics, the radiation heightened his other senses to the point that he was given his trademark radar sense, which allows him to do sick flips and fight crime as Daredevil. Daredevil is quite a religious fellow who also believes in letting the legal system do its work as much as possible, so he has a pretty strict stance against killing people, believing that the criminals he fights should be taken to prison and left alive. This has put him at odds with other more lethal characters like the Punisher, who thinks that the only good criminal is a dead criminal. But despite the fact that he is often tempted, Daredevil holds back, using his ninja skills to brutalize and maim, but not to kill. This self-imposed rule has been broken a couple times, such as when he was possessed by a demon, when he was forced to shoot a helicopter pilot who was using a minigun to brutalize Hell's Kitchen, and when he attempted to shoot the Punisher, when Frank had tied him up and taped a gun to his hand. But once again, these are pretty extreme situations where he didn't really have any other options. Number 9. Professor X. Charles Xavier is the leader of the X-Men and the founder of a school for gifted youngsters where he trains young mutants to control their powers so that they don't accidentally destroy buildings on the regular. He is an extremely powerful mutant, being able to read and control people's minds. In theory, he could force anyone to do pretty much anything he wants. Thankfully, Xavier shows a decent amount of restraint with his powers, and usually makes a point of not reading his students' minds without permission, and rarely using them to make people act against their nature. For example, considering that governments in the Marvel Universe are consistently passing anti-mutant legislation, it would be very tempting to control the responsible politicians' minds to force them not to vote for such measures. But he doesn't do stuff like that. Sure, he has a bit of a god complex, and has a history of wiping people's minds when he screws up, or dampening Jean Grey's powers until he feels she's ready for them. But overall, he shows a lot of restraint. Outside the comics, in the X-Men 2 movie, we even see that while using Cerebro, Professor X could kill every mutant or human in existence simply by concentrating. So, yeah, he's holding back. Number 8, Batman. Batman is similar to Daredevil in the regard that he is one of the most gifted martial artists in the world and has extensive knowledge on how to handle any situation. Like Daredevil, he also has a strict moral code that prevents him from killing any of the criminals he faces, despite the fact that he certainly could with ease. For example, in Book 1 of The Dark Knight Returns, Batman is fighting against a group of thugs, and in his inner monologue, we can see him playing out strategies, saying, "There are 7 working defenses from this position. 3 of them disarm with minimal contact. 3 of them kill, and the other hurts." He, of course, chooses the option that hurts. But it is a good example of how, as a master strategist, in any situation, he is aware of how he could kill, but chooses not to. This is due to him not wanting to go down the path of his villains, and having a desire to see criminals reform, often hiring criminals who are let out of prison to work at Wayne Enterprises. So, like Daredevil, he has a strict moral code, but he is better than Daredevil at sticking to it, earning him the higher slot. Number 7, Thor. Thor is literally the god of thunder. He can bring down lightning, he can smash stuff with his hammer, and he is an amazing warrior with centuries of combat experience. In fact, he was so powerful and arrogant that his father, Odin, sent him to Earth in order to temper his power with humility. For those only familiar with movie Thor, in the comics, Odin sent Thor to Earth with no memories of his life as a god, and made him believe that he was a doctor with a bum leg named Donald Blake. As detailed in the character's first appearance in Journey into Mystery number 83, he spent a decade on Earth learning the value of hard work and perseverance as he dealt with his injured leg and set up his own medical practice. After this decade had passed, Odin implanted a message in Thor's subconscious telling him to go to Norway, where he found his hammer and regained his godly identity. I don't know if this is full on holding his power back, but the fact that he went through all of that to learn humility and what it meant to be worthy of his powers shows that Thor is very aware of his powers and the proper way to use them. Number 6, Quake. Daisy Johnson is the daughter of the villain Mr. Hyde and a woman with the Inhuman gene. This resulted in her developing the ability to manipulate vibrations. She can use these for a variety of purposes, like causing earthquakes, hence the name Quake. She can also use these powers on a more micro level, such as when she took on the Omega-level mutant Magneto and managed to vibrate his brain until he fell unconscious in New Avengers number 20. On another occasion, when Wolverine was having one of his famous temper tantrums and attacked Nick Fury, she was able to use her vibration powers to cause his heart to explode. So, she has the power to take on some of the most notoriously dangerous characters in the Marvel Universe. In fact, she is so powerful that she actually needs to be really careful about how she uses her powers. Obviously, earthquakes can cause a huge amount of collateral damage, so she needs to be careful of that. But the best example of these powers left unchecked is from the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. television show, where Glenn Talbot gets Quake's powers in an alternate timeline and uses them to destroy the planet. So, yeah, she needs to be careful. Number 5, Gambit. Remy LeBeau is a powerful and popular member of the X-Men with the ability to tap into an item's potential kinetic energy, making it a dangerous and explosive weapon. He most often uses smaller items like a deck of playing cards, which he will then throw at his enemies. The only real limit on these powers is that he needs to make direct skin contact with whatever item he's charging, hence the cool fingerless gloves. Oh, and also the amount of time it takes him to charge the object, with larger objects taking longer. He also has the ability to hypnotically charm people, making them more likely to do what he wants. Before he was a member of the X-Men, he was a master thief, but found that he was having trouble controlling his powers, causing him to seek out the help of Mr. Sinister, who gave Gambit a surgery, removing part of his brain in order to dampen his powers and make them more manageable. So, while there may be other heroes on this list who are more powerful, none of them took such extreme measures to hold themselves back for the safety of others. Number 4, Northstar.
Oh, Andrew, you talk about Alpha Flight on almost every list. Why don't you talk about more popular teams?
Well, I'll tell you, it's because they're awesome. And because I spent a lot of money collecting every appearance of Alpha Flight over the pandemic, including the issue in Volume 2 that features the first appearance of Big Hero 6, which was a real pain in the butt to find. And talking about them in a work video makes that a tax write-off. Plus, it's my list, and you're literally in my home right now, so I'm gonna talk about who I want to talk about. Jean-Paul Beaulier is the fastest mutant in the Marvel Universe, since Quicksilver isn't a mutant anymore. Northstar is capable of reaching incredible speeds when running or flying. He has a twin sister named Aurora, who is also fast and able to fly, but though she has a greater endurance than her brother, he is the faster of the two. In X-Factor Volume 4, Number 7, Northstar and fellow speedster Tommy Shepard are comparing top speeds, and JP reveals that his top speed is 189,299 miles per second, which makes him faster than the speed of light. But he has a very good reason for not reaching his full speed. As he explains to Tommy, that would destroy everything in my path. I could garrote the world in half with one lap if I wished it. It would destroy me physically, not emotionally. I can't breathe at that point, because I've created a vacuum, and my organs are getting crushed, my bones pulverized into dust. So, yeah, Northstar is holding back for good reason. Number 3, Captain Atom. Captain Atom was originally a Charlton Comics character, the same way that Shazam used to be. DC Comics eventually purchased Charlton's collection of heroes, and as a result, he was introduced into the DC universe. In the DC retelling of his origin, Nathaniel Atom was a man sentenced to death for treason. He was offered the opportunity to instead sign up for an experiment designed to test the structural integrity of an alien metal. To test this, they placed Atom in a metal egg and then blasted it with a nuclear explosion. He was vaporized, but much like the Watchmen character he inspired, Dr. Manhattan, he was reconstituted with the metal now covering his skin. Captain Atom can tap into the quantum field and convert the energy into powerful blasts. He can also generate and manipulate matter, such as when he transformed Green Arrow's arrows into butterflies. Captain Atom has to be very careful with his powers, as he is essentially a walking nuke. When he uses his upper power levels, he will start to leak radiation, and if his metal skin is ruptured, he risks detonating like an atomic bomb and destroying whatever city he's in. Number 2, Scarlet Witch. So, Scarlet Witch is one of the most crazy powerful people in the Marvel Universe. One time, she was able to rewrite reality so that mutants were the dominant species on the planet and humans the minority. When Magneto ticked her off, she decided to rewrite reality again, taking away something like 99% of the world's mutant powers by simply saying, no more mutants. She could do that again anytime she wants. I really don't think I need to say anything else on the subject. Number 1, Spider-Man. When I was checking out the previous 2 videos that Amanda did on this subject, which you should of course check out because they're great and also not filmed in an apartment, but I was shocked to learn that Spider-Man didn't make the cut on either installment. So even though he may not be holding back as much as some of the others on this list, I decided to give him the top spot here. Spider-Man is a powerful hero, being able to climb walls, swing from webs, and use his spider sense to avoid danger. But what we're talking about here is his super strength. He can lift several tons at once, as he infamously did in Amazing Spider-Man number 33, when Dr. Octopus trapped him under loads of heavy machinery. But when you have that level of strength, and also have a rule against killing, you have to make sure you pull your punches to avoid taking someone's head off. This was discovered by Doc Ock when he took over Spider-Man's body and became the superior Spider-Man. In one of his first adventures as the new Spidey, Ock fought the Scorpion, and when he punched the Scorpion in the jaw flew clean off. As Doc put it, never knew this body held so much power. All these years, Parker must have been holding back. That really must have made him rethink every time Spider-Man punched him and how that could have turned out.
Number 10, the Spectre. This spirit of vengeance in the DC universe first appeared in More Fun Comics number 52. He was originally a demon named Aztar who was helping Lucifer to try and take control of heaven. He eventually had a change of heart and surrendered to the Archangel Michael. As a means of atonement, his memory and consciousness were wiped and he was transformed into the Spectre. He is a divinely powered being capable of almost anything he can imagine. He can travel between dimensions and can shoot energy blasts, is immortal and capable of flight, intangibility, possession, telepathy, and telekinesis, just to name a few of his powers. In order to temper this power, he must be bonded to a human host, with his most often host being Jim Corrigan. Spectre has no limit to his power, but is bound by the morality of his host, who often prevents him from unleashing the full wrath of God upon his enemies. Number 9, Green Lantern. The Green Lantern Corps are a group of intergalactic space cops who are led by a group of aliens known as the Guardians of the Universe. They have used the green power of will to create a central power battery on the planet Oa, and to create power rings which recruit members to the Corps and allow them to protect their sectors by creating constructs of anything the wearer can imagine. One of the most powerful and famous Green Lanterns is Hal Jordan, who has created a lot of amazing constructs over the years. When his home, Coast City, was destroyed, Hal showed just how powerful the Green Lantern ring really was by using it to create constructs of the destroyed city and everyone in it for him to interact with when he mourned. However, when he did this, he was breaking the rules established by the Guardians, who forbid the use of the ring for personal gain. The Guardians immediately told him to report to Oa for disciplinary action, but Hal went nuts and went to war with the Green Lanterns. However, it is still a good example of how the power ring is potentially unlimited, but using its full power in an undesignated way can result in the ring being taken away by the Guardians, which I think makes this point apply to all of the various members of the Green Lantern Corps. Number 8, Hyperion. Marcus Milton was sent to Earth 13,034 as a baby from a dying world of Eternals, where he was raised by a human father who taught him the morals of society. When he grew up, he became the superhero known as Hyperion and joined the super team Squadron Supreme. When his universe and another were colliding, Hyperion tried to prevent his universe's destruction, but failed and was left floating in nothingness until AIM scientists on Earth 616 pulled him into their reality and took him prisoner. He was eventually freed by the Avengers, who he then joined. Hyperion is a ripoff of Superman, whose powers come from the sun. As such, he has a very similar power set, being nearly invulnerable, having super strength, speed, stamina, and the ability to fly and shoot atomic energy from his eyes. Like Superman, he has to be extremely cautious due to his amazing strength, as he could easily destroy the planet if he lets loose too much. Unlike Superman, he has cut loose in a violent way before, such as when he plucked Atlantis from the sea and threw it to the ground, thus destroying it. But he felt bad later, so it's okay. Number 7, Captain Marvel. Carol Danvers is the half-human, half-Kree warrior who joined the Air Force before joining NASA. She discovered her powers and became a superhero, operating under various different aliases such as Miss Marvel, Binary, and Warbird, before eventually taking up the mantle of her dead love, Captain Marvel. She is an extremely powerful hero who has been a member of the Avengers, an honorary X-Man, a Starjammer, and the leader of the Alpha Flight space program. Captain Marvel has all the classic powers such as super strength, durability, and flight, but also has a few extra ones, such as the ability to shoot photon beams and the ability to transmute matter in order to reshape it into anything she wants. She is yet another example of a hero so powerful that they have to be sure to restrain themselves in order to not accidentally kill everyone on the planet. Number 6, Rogue. Perhaps the most obvious choice for a spot on this list, and one that it's frankly kind of embarrassing none of us thought to put in any of the previous 3 videos on this subject, is Rogue. Anna Marie has the mutant power to absorb people's energies through touch, which temporarily grants her their abilities, powers, and memories, and causes her victims to be weakened. She once attacked Carol Danvers, and as a result, permanently ended up with her powers of super strength and flight. She started out as a member of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants before eventually joining the X-Men. Although her powers can be useful in a combat setting, it can really mess with your personal life when you can't touch anyone you care about without hurting them. So, most of the time, Rogue holds back her powers by wearing gloves for the safety of those around her. Number 5, Storm. Aurora Monroe is descended from a long line of African priestesses who all have white hair and the potential to use magic. Her mother was a princess who married an American photojournalist and moved with him to Manhattan, where Storm was born. They moved to Cairo when she was 6 months old, but when she was 5, her parents were killed, leaving her an orphan. She lived as a thief for a while before eventually making her way to Kenya, where her weather-controlling powers made her be worshipped as a goddess. She is connected to Earth's weather patterns, and as a result, her emotions can result in unstable weather. If she gets mad, she could start a tornado, for example. Therefore, she has to be careful to keep her powers in check, lest she accidentally cause a natural disaster. Following the death of Wolverine, Storm had Beast take her into space so she could safely vent her emotions, and she still ended up igniting Earth's atmosphere, causing an aurora borealis effect across the entire planet. Number 4, Ghost Rider. Johnny Blaze is a motorcycle stuntman who, in an effort to save his surrogate father, Crash Simpson, from dying of cancer, made a deal with the demon Mephisto. Mephisto promised to cure Crash's cancer in exchange for Johnny's service. Unfortunately, Crash perished in a stunt gone wrong almost immediately afterwards, and Johnny became Ghost Rider, becoming bound to the spirit of vengeance, Zarathos. When transformed into the Rider, he has super strength, is essentially immune to damage, and can manipulate hellfire. Perhaps most iconic is his penance stare, which causes its victims to experience every bit of pain that they have ever inflicted on other people, resulting in guilt, pain, and trauma. Ghost Rider is extremely powerful, but Zarathos tends to want to go really all out on his quest for vengeance, and Johnny often has to hold him back to prevent him from going too far. Number 3, Iceman. Bobby Drake is a mutant whose powers were first revealed when he was attacked by a group of school bullies and he was forced to freeze their leader into a block of ice. An angry mob showed up at his home planning to execute Bobby, but he was saved by Cyclops and Professor X, and he was invited to join the X-Men. His powers include the ability to become organic ice. He can also generate ice, snow, and cold temperature using the moisture in the air. This is actually more powerful than you might initially think, allowing Bobby to freeze the Earth in Astonishing X-Men Volume 3, number 64. He is an Omega-level mutant who holds back from using the full extent of his powers as he fears that he could be dangerous. Professor X once said that Iceman has the potential to destroy the planet if he's not careful, and for a time, Bobby was known to wear a special power belt which helped him keep his powers under control. Number 2, the Human Torch. When Johnny Storm was exposed to cosmic rays while on a space exploration mission with his sister Sue, Reed Richards, and Ben Grimm, he was transformed into the Human Torch, and the group became Marvel's first family, the Fantastic Four. As the Human Torch, Johnny is capable of controlling ambient heat and transforming into a fiery plasma. He can sculpt and throw flames with his pyrokinesis and is able to fly. Most relevant to this list is his Nova Flame, which happens when the torch reaches his hottest temperature and expels it 900 feet around him at a temperature of 1 million degrees Fahrenheit. This makes him about as hot as a nuclear warhead, and if he did this in a populated area, it could result in several deaths. He has stated that this power has the ability to destroy a small moon. He also has to hold back so that he doesn't burn up the Earth's atmosphere, killing everyone on the planet. Number 1, Supergirl. Kara Zor-El is Superman's cousin. When the planet Krypton was destroyed, Kara's home, Argo City, was spared thanks to the efforts efforts of her father, although due to radiation the city was slowly turning to kryptonite. When the city was deemed past the point of no return, her father pulled a page out of his brother's book and built a rocket, sending Kara to Earth. She became Supergirl and was placed in an orphanage by Superman as part of her cover, although she was eventually adopted by the Danvers family. Supergirl has all of the same powers as Superman, such as flight, super strength, speed, hearing, invulnerability, as well as X-ray and heat vision. As someone with the same powers as Superman, Supergirl has to hold back when she fights villains, or even just interacts with people in general, in order to make sure that she doesn't reduce anyone she comes into contact with into a fine red mist. She is slightly less powerful than her cousin, but there was a period where she became a member of the Red Lantern Corps, giving her both the powers of a Kryptonian and a lantern to try and have to control.
Number 10. Cyclops. While Cyclops might not be as powerful as some of the others on this list, he pretty much perfectly sums up the idea of a hero who has to hold back his power in order to fight. I mean, that's literally what his costume is for, really. Well, other than that sweet X-Men suit. That is just so we know what team he's fighting alongside. But when it comes to his visor, that is straight up being used to better control and restrain his powers, so that he isn't just optic blasting everyone he looks at or comes up against into next week. Additionally, Cyclops doesn't just use his visor, but also uses his gloves to do this. In his gloves are little buttons that Cyclops can basically push to control the visor, allowing him to open it more or less and change the angle at which it will emit his optic blasts. This is also why Cyclops is known as a master of trigonometry. He needs this knowledge so that he can best utilize his optic blasts, knowing exactly how and when to fire them, and with how much intensity in order to achieve whatever the fight calls for. So whether it's a giant full frontal blast or something a little bit more subtle, Cyclops is always prepared for each and every occasion, as long as he has his trig knowledge intact and his visor and his gloves with him. Since the character first debuted, his powers and their immense strength are something that have also been shown as bothering and plaguing this character, with him even believing that Jean could actually never love him because of his uncontrollable optic blasts. How could she ever love me? I have to wear rose quartz glasses all the time. It's not that big of a deal, psych. Just chill. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like button? Number 9. Starfire. Starfire is a character who is immensely powerful, and honestly, we don't talk about her enough on this channel. It's been a minute since we talked about Corey, but let's get into it. The Teen Titans in general are an immensely powerful team, and now that they're no longer teens and are fully grown adults, being known simply as the Titans, they're even more powerful than they once were. Being in control of superpowers as an adult superhero is really, I think, all about knowing when to hold back. Over time, characters have a tendency to only get more powerful and more experienced with age, and Starfire is no exception. In the comics, even pre-Flashpoint Starfire in a fight against Blackfire acknowledges that she is indeed her sister's equal in terms of her power and prowess, saying that the only reason that she has not beaten her sister is because they have never fought as equals, despite being equal to one another. And her sister responds by saying that due to Starfire's caring nature, Corey often holds back, which is basically her weakness. At least, that's how Blackfire sees it. While Blackfire might see this as a weakness, I'm sure Starfire would actually see it as a strength, as it is also what makes her a hero. Sometimes in order to be a hero, you have to know when to restrain yourself, you know what I mean? Number 8. Gentle. Gentle is such a great mutant hero, one we honestly do not talk enough about. His power is so great that it's believed using it could actually result in him losing his life. As a result, Gentle was given vibranium tattoos, which allow him to better contain and control his powers. His powers grant him augmented strength. Despite his mutant name, Gentle can actually become insanely muscular, increasing in size and mass, and we don't actually know the limits of his powers yet, which is why they're also so dangerous. Using them is also really hard on Nesno's body, which could result in his death. Gentle is a hero who, while also a citizen of Krakoa now, is also known for his Wakandan heritage, being actually part Wakandan and part Russian based on his parents' heritage. Initially, it was believed that using his power also caused him great pain and actually resulted in seizures, but we later learned that this was actually more psychological. The vibranium tattoos were therefore helpful for him in regards to using his powers, but were also helpful in the way that they seemed to help lessen his pain. Gentle was also recently a candidate for the X-Men, and one of the mutants you could vote to have elected to the team. He didn't get chosen, but I honestly hope he does get to join the main team in the future, as he's a really neat and unique hero and character. Number 7. The Flash. The Flash might seem like a weird pick for this list, especially as up to this point we've mostly been focusing on characters who have something physical or mental that forces them to hold back their power set. But with the Flash, it's actually all about how powerful he is. He is, I would say, too powerful, which is the issue, especially in regards to his ability to time travel. While Barry Allen as the Flash has traveled back in time and changed things only to learn afterwards of how this was kind of an awful mistake, upturning the entire universe as a result of the change he'd made to basically save his mother, Wally West has seemingly learned from his predecessor's mistakes. For that reason, Wally actually prefers not to get involved when it comes to time travel. He knows that to do so could possibly break the universe, and so has a tendency to be more reserved and much more careful when it comes to racing through the time stream. And even when his friend Hunter Zolomon had begged Wally to use his power to help reverse his paralysis by traveling back in time to prevent it, Wally actually refused. This is what prompted Hunter to become the villain known as Zoom, believing that Wally simply wouldn't help him because he'd just not known enough tragedy in his life, as Hunter had. Zoom believed that in order to make Wally as the Flash a better hero, he would actually have to make him suffer. Number 6. Hellstrom. Hellstrom is actually someone who is similar to another character on this list in regards to his heritage, although the other character I'm comparing him to here is actually not from Marvel, but stay tuned for more on that. Because this point is all about Damon Hellstrom, or Hellstorm, depending on his persona and his mood. Hellstrom is said to be the son of Satan, although it is unknown up to this point if his father is really the true devil or just one of the many demons posing as the devil in the Marvel Universe, including Damon's father, as well as Azazel, who is Nightcrawler's father, and Mephisto, who isn't really known for being a father, but did once have a son named Blackheart. That is a thing that happened, and Blackheart did try to usurp him, so, you know. Hellstrom, as such, has two different personas within him, one that is inherently more good and heroic, and another that is straight up or on the verge of being evil, more influenced by his father's heritage. Sometimes these two personas are kind of given different names as well, Hellstrom or Hellstorm, depending on which persona he is leaning more towards at the time. Sometimes Hellstrom is actually only spelled with one L, and other times he's used these names to sort of like protect his identity, although they are both super similar, so I don't really fully understand how that's supposed to fool anyone. Hellstrom has often struggled with unleashing the full force of his power, and sometimes, in fact I would say often, regrets its ties to hell and the darkness that lies within him. Number 5. Shazam. Shazam, or Captain Marvel as some still refer to him today, is one of the most powerful heroes DC has, and in fact some would argue that when it comes to his fights and contests with Superman, it is he, not Superman, who is often the one who would need to hold back. This is because Shazam's powers come from the gods, and some actually say this is because his powers are kind of magical. The limitless wisdom of Solomon, the strength of Hercules, stamina of Atlas, power and omnipotence of Zeus, courage of Achilles, and speed of Mercury. There is really no limit, or there shouldn't be, to what he can do, and it is because of this sheer power and strength that Shazam often needs to hold back when fighting against his enemies as well. You could also add in the fact that it is Billy Batson's kind heart that often encourages him to hold back against his enemies, preferring to not be so brutal with his enemies or his opponents. I mean, especially if they are his friends or people he looks up to, because, you know, even heroes sometimes fight each other, like in a fight against Supes. At one point, Superman even played host to Captain Marvel and actually marveled at his sheer power. So, you know you're probably going to need to hold back when you're like wowing Superman with your power levels. Number 4. Blue Marvel. If you are powerful enough to knock out Hulk and live to tell the tale, even if he possibly is maybe a less stronger version of the Hulk from the Ultimate Universe, then you probably need to rein in your powers almost all the time. Blue Marvel's powers come from him being a scientist and being forever changed by an experiment gone wrong. Adam Brashear was the project lead on an experimental attempt to manipulate and utilize antimatter. When the negative reactor exploded it transformed Adam into, in essence, what he was trying to create. He became an antimatter reactor, harnessing antimatter, which basically powered his amazing newfound abilities. Number 3, Superman. I mean, Superman is one of the strongest superheroes DC has to offer. He packs a mean punch, and I mean a mean punch. He often holds back, and not just in regards to strength and holding back actual force, but also in terms of his morality. Superman has a very strong moral code. He won't even hit someone in the back if their back is turned to him. That's how passionate he is about fighting fair. He doesn't hit his opponents when they're down, and he doesn't kill, even though he could very easily permanently defeat his opponents by just straight up ending them. This just isn't Superman's style, and honestly, it's what most people love and respect about Superman. To use his power to annihilate his opponents would actually kind of be sinking to their level. In fact, in realities where he has chosen not to hold back, like Injustice, where he brutally murders the Joker in response to him destroying Metropolis, killing his BFF Jimmy Olsen, and manipulating Superman into killing Lois, Clark becomes a straight up villain and a brutal dictator, which is why he chooses to hold back more often than not in the comics, because he is aware of how power can easily corrupt people. I mean, to be honest, a lot of his villains are people who allow themselves to become corrupted by great power, whether or not they're aware of that. Number 2, Hulk. To say that the Hulk is the strongest there is really not an overstatement. Not only the strongest, but also just one of the most indestructible heroes out there. After all, Hulk is also now immortal, and kinda has been the whole time. And as a result of this, is a character that you do not want to face in a fight. The good news is that Hulk typically doesn't want to kill people, and so he generally does hold back in fights, unless he's going up against someone, you know, that's just about as indestructible as he is. Like, he might not hold back as much when he's fighting someone like the Thing. There are a few reasons that this happens when it comes to Hulk holding back. One, Hulk has actually exhibited he himself has morals. Not all Hulk personas are like this. I mean, look at his alternate version, Maestro, from the future. This version of the Hulk is more devoid of morals and is therefore willing to use all of his strength and power to devastating degrees. The other reason Hulk is often holding back actually has to do with the other persona that's in there with him at the time, Bruce Banner. It's been alluded to before that Bruce can act at times like the Hulk's conscience, but then again, it's also been suggested that Hulk actually might be Bruce's conscience, so kinda depends on the story you're reading as to who is the more heroic between those two personas. Number 1, Raven. Raven is another character that basically sums up the idea of a person who has to hold back and really has no choice in that matter. I mean, we've seen what happens when Raven fully lets go, and it's deadly. Raven in general has to hold back her power in regards to letting herself be fueled by emotion, which is why she generally remains extremely detached. Which also makes her a great counterbalance to someone like Starfire on the Teen Titans team. While Starfire's issue when it comes to holding back is that she has too much emotion, too much empathy for those around her, Raven often prefers to stay closed off from those emotions, knowing that with them could come great power, but at the risk of easily losing control. This is a huge issue for Raven considering her heritage. Raven is related to the demon Trigon, who is immensely powerful and is a version of Satan in essence in the DC universe. While Trigon is her father, he is also her arch nemesis, which means she has to be careful when it comes to possibly opening herself up to his influence at all, as it can and has in the past turned Raven into an extremely dangerous and powerful supervillain. One that could like literally end worlds, so yeah.